The forest fell silent in a way that made every creature hold its breath. A young deer stood frozen at the edge of a moonlit, clearing her heart pounding so violently that she could feel it in her throat. Across the open ground, just 50 steps away, a pack of wolves had surrounded her mother. Their eyes glowed like embers in the darkness, and their low growls filled the night air with the unmistakable sound of death approaching. The young deer wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee into the shadows and save herself. But something held her there. Something whispered that running away would haunt her forever. In that terrible, beautiful moment bathed in silver moonlight, she faced a choice that would define not just her survival, but her very soul. What she discovered in the next few heartbeats would change everything she believed about fear, about strength, and about what it truly means to be brave. Her name was Arya, and she had always been the fearful one. From the moment she took her first trembling steps on wobbly legs, she startled at every sound and flinched at every shadow. The other young deer in the herd would venture to the edges of the meadow, exploring the world with curiosity and excitement. But Arya stayed close to her mother, always watching, always waiting for danger that seemed to lurk behind every tree. Her mother would nuzzle her gently and tell her that caution was wise, but that fear should never become a prison. Arya did not understand what that meant. She only knew that the world felt enormous and threatening, and that she was small and fragile and utterly unprepared for its cruelty. The other deer sometimes teased her for her timidity. They would bound through the forest, leaping over fallen logs and splashing through streams, while Arya hung back, calculating every risk and imagining every disaster. "Why are you always so afraid?" they would ask, their voices carrying the casual cruelty that young creatures often display without meaning harm. Arya had no answer that satisfied them or herself. She simply was afraid. It was woven into her being like the spots on her coat or the shape of her ears. She had accepted it as her permanent identity. She was Arya, the fearful deer, and she believed she would always be exactly that. Her mother never criticized her for her fear. Instead, she would share stories during the quiet hours when the herd rested beneath the ancient oaks. She told tales of deer who had faced impossible odds and survived. She spoke of ancestors who had crossed raging rivers and escaped forest fires and outsmarted predators through cleverness and determination. But most importantly, she told Arya about courage in a way that the young deer had never heard before. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she would say, her voice soft and wise. "Courage is being afraid and moving forward anyway." The bravest deer I ever knew was also the most frightened, but she never let her fear make her decisions for her. Arya listened to these stories, but she did not believe they applied to her. Those deer in the tailies were different somehow. They were born with something she lacked. They had a fire inside them that Arya was certain had been left out of her creation. She was meant to be small and scared and forgettable. She would live her life in the shadows of braver deer, and when her time came, she would slip away quietly, having never done anything remarkable. This was the story she told herself every night before she slept. This was the identity she had constructed so carefully that she could not imagine any other way of existing. Then came the night that shattered everything. The herd had settled in a small valley surrounded by gentle hills and thick forest. The moon was full and bright, casting the world in shades of silver and shadow. Arya's mother had wandered slightly away from the group to drink from a stream that wound through the trees. Arya watched her go, feeling the familiar anxiety rise in her chest. Something felt wrong. The air was too still. The night birds had stopped singing. Even the insects seemed to be holding their breath. Before she could call out a warning, the wolves emerged from the darkness. They moved like ghosts, their bodies low and their eyes fixed on their target with terrible focus. Arya's mother saw them too late. She tried to run, but they had already surrounded her, cutting off every escape route with practiced precision. The rest of the herd scattered in panic, crashing through the underbrush in a desperate flight for survival. But Arya did not run. She stood paralyzed, watching the scene unfold, as if trapped in a nightmare from which she could not wake. Her mother looked across the clearing, and their eyes met. In that gaze, Arya saw something she had never seen before. Not fear, acceptance. Her mother was preparing to die. Something broke inside Arya in that moment. Something that had been holding her back her entire life suddenly snapped like a twig beneath a heavy hoof. She did not think. She did not calculate the odds or imagine the consequences. She simply moved. Her legs carried her forward into the clearing directly toward the circle of wolves. She ran faster than she had ever run before, her hooves barely touching the ground as she closed the distance. The wolves turned in surprise, their formation breaking for just an instant as this unexpected intruder charged into their midst. Arya lowered her head and struck the nearest wolf with every ounce of strength her young body possessed. The impact sent the predator tumbling sideways, and before the others could react, Arya was beside her mother. "Run," she gasped, her voice strange and powerful in her own ears. "I will hold them." Her mother stared at her in disbelief, but there was no time for questions. The wolves were already recovering, and their surprise was turning to anger. Together, mother and daughter burst through the gap Arya had created, racing into the forest, with the pack howling behind them. What followed was the longest night of Arya's life. The wolves pursued them relentlessly through thickets and across streams and up rocky hillsides. Several times the predators nearly caught them, their snapping jaws missing by inches. But Arya refused to slow down. She pushed her mother forward when exhaustion threatened to claim her. She led them through narrow passages where the wolves could not follow easily. She used every bit of knowledge she had gathered during her years of fearful observation, turning her paranoid awareness of danger into a survival advantage. By the time dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, the wolves had finally given up the chase. Mother and daughter collapsed in a hidden grove, surrounded by dense brambles that no predator could penetrate. They lay there gasping for breath, their sides heaving and their legs trembling from exertion. Arya's mother looked at her daughter with eyes full of wonder and tears. How she whispered, "How did you do that? You've always been so afraid." Arya thought about the question for a long time before answering. She replayed the moment when she had charged into that circle of wolves. She had been terrified, more frightened than she had ever been in her entire life. Her body had screamed at her to run away, and every rational thought had told her she was committing suicide. "I was afraid," Arya finally said, her voice quiet but steady. "I was more afraid than I've ever been. But I realized something when I saw them surrounding you. I realized that there are things worse than being afraid. There are things worse than dying. Living with the knowledge that I ran away while you needed me would have destroyed me in ways that wolf teeth never could. So I did not run. I chose you over my fear. And somehow that choice made me stronger than I knew I could be." Her mother nuzzled her gently, tears streaming down her face. "That is courage, my daughter. That is what I have been trying to tell you all along. Courage is not about being unafraid. The deer without fear is not brave but foolish. True courage is knowing what matters more than your own survival. It is choosing love over safety and purpose over comfort. Tonight you discovered what you are truly made of, and it is magnificent." And the days that followed, Arya changed. Not because she suddenly stopped feeling fear. She still startled at unexpected sounds and worried about dangers lurking in shadows. But now she understood that fear was not her master. It was simply information. It told her that something mattered enough to be protected. It alerted her to risks that needed to be evaluated. But the final decision about what to do always remained with her. Fear could advise, but it could never command. She had proven that on the night when everything seemed lost. She could prove it again every single day for the rest of her life. The other deer in the herd looked at Arya differently now. News of her bravery had spread through the forest, carried by birds and whispered by the wind. The young deer who had once teased her for her timidity now approached her with respect and curiosity. "How did you find the courage?" they asked. "What changed inside you?" Arya would tell them the same thing each time. "Nothing changed inside me." The courage was always there, hidden beneath the fear, waiting for a moment important enough to bring it forward. You have it too. Everyone does. You simply have not discovered what matters enough to unlock it yet. This truth applies to every living creature, including you reading these words right now. You have felt like Arya. You have believed that courage belongs to other people while you were somehow made differently. You have watched others take bold action and assumed they possess something you lacked. But courage is not a trait that some receive and others do not. It is a choice that becomes available whenever something matters enough to outweigh your fear of consequences. The question is not whether you're brave. The question is whether you have found your reason to be brave. Think about what that reason might be for you. Perhaps it is a person you love who needs you to show up, even when showing up is terrifying. Perhaps it is a dream you have carried secretly for years, too afraid to pursue because failure seems unbearable. Perhaps it is a wrong you have witnessed that demands someone speak up, even at personal cost. Your wolves are circling something precious right now. They might be wolves of rejection or failure or judgment or loss. They are real and they are frightening, and every rational part of you wants to run away. But somewhere inside you, the same power that lived in Arya waits to be awakened. The forest taught Arya another lesson in the moons that followed. She discovered that courage was not a single moment, but a practice. Every day presented small opportunities to choose bravery over fear. Speaking up when the herd made a dangerous decision, exploring unfamiliar territory despite her anxiety, helping younger deer face their own fears by sharing what she had learned. Each small act of courage strengthened her like a muscle that grew more powerful with use. The deer who had once been too afraid to leave her mother's side became a leader that others looked to for guidance and strength. But Arya never forgot her fear. She never pretended it did not exist or tried to suppress it into silence. Instead, she developed a relationship with it. She would acknowledge its presence and listen to what it was trying to tell her. Then she would thank it for its concern and make her own choice about how to respond. Sometimes fear had valuable information and she would heed its warning. Other times fear was simply reacting to the unknown and she would move forward despite its protests. The key was never letting fear make the decision automatically. The key was staying in control of her own choices. There is a moment that comes to everyone when the moonlight reveals who we really are. It might come in a hospital room when someone you love is fighting for their life. It might come in a boardroom when your integrity is tested by powerful people who expect you to compromise. It might come in a quiet conversation when speaking the truth could cost you a relationship, but staying silent would cost you yourself. In that moment, everything you believe about your own limitations will be challenged. And you will discover, as Arya did, that you are capable of far more than you ever imagined. The wolves in your life are counting on your fear. They expect you to run. They believe that their growls and their numbers and their reputation for destruction will paralyze you into helplessness. But they have made a critical miscalculation. They do not know about the fire that lives inside you. They do not understand that love and purpose and meaning can transform the most timid creature into something fierce and unstoppable. They see only your history of running and assume it predicts your future. Prove them wrong. Charge into that clearing. Choose what matters most over what feels safest. Arya lived many more years and faced many more dangers. Some she overcame through courage, and some she survived through wisdom, and some she simply endured through stubborn persistence. But she never again believed that she was defined by her fear. She knew now that she was defined by her choices. Every creature feels fear. Every heart races in the face of danger. The difference between those who live fully and those who merely exist is what they do when the fear arrives. Do they let it make their decisions, or do they make their own decisions despite its presence? The moon still rises over that forest where Arya discovered her courage. It still casts its silver light over clearings where predators hunt and prey fights for survival. Somewhere in those shadows, young deer are learning the same lessons Arya learned. They are discovering that the trembling in their legs does not determine their destiny. They are finding out that courage is not the absence of the shaking, but the willingness to move while still shaking. And perhaps tonight, under that same moonlight, you will discover it too. Your moment is coming if it has not already arrived. The wolves are circling something or someone you love. The world is waiting to see what you are made of. Every fear you have ever felt has been preparation for this, not punishment, but training. Not weakness, but sensitivity that will help you recognize when the stakes are real. Trust what Arya learned on that moonlit night. The courage you need is already inside you, sleeping beneath layers of doubt and past failures and other people's expectations. It is waiting for you to find something worth being brave for. When you find it, do not hesitate. Do not calculate the odds or wait for the fear to pass. It will not pass. Fear never fully leaves us because life always contains genuine risks. But you can move anyway. You can charge into the clearing anyway. You can stand between the wolves and what you love anyway. And in that moment of impossible bravery, you will finally understand what Arya understood. You will know at last what courage really means. It means being terrified and choosing love. It means trembling and moving forward. It means being small and fragile and mortal, and still refusing to abandon what matters most. The moonlight is waiting to reveal who you really are. The question is whether you are ready to look.